Hello and welcome everyone to the next Foreman community demo. Your host Ken Gilvin here, and we've got a pretty packed show for you today. It's a little bit busier than it has been in recent demos. And our last presenter has arrived just as I start the broadcast. Perfect timing. So we have everybody here. It's all good to go. I'm going to crack right on because we're going to be a little bit pushed for time today, so I won't waffle as much as perhaps I usually do. So today we'll be covering quick note on 112.2. Typo. 112.2 has been released yesterday. We have some Ansible updates for you. We have some remote execution. We have some updates from Catelloland. Lukash is going to tell us a bit about UEFI support that's coming. And there's a few small fixes to the UI from Toma as well. So lots and lots to cover. Very quickly, as I said, 1.12.2 is now out for your downloading pleasure. It's mostly a security fix. We have 2 CVEs, and there were security issues in the latest update of Rails as well. So do go and get that. It's important. So let's talk about the usual community stats. I've been doing a bit of editing. We have shiny tables. Check it out, tables. I've been busy. I have been busy, but not just on writing tables, I do promise. So the usual download metrics, we're down a little bit, 8K this time around. I have made a change to the metrics. In previous demos, the metrics have always been since the last demo, so usually 3 weeks of time. But that becomes unreliable, as many of you will have noticed. This demo is late. I was on holiday and I forgot to send out the notifications, so people would have only had 1 day in order to come up with content for the demo. That was a little unfair, so I pushed it out a week. But that means all my statistics are now out by a week as well. So I thought better to standardize on a month at a time. So that does mean in general the demo stats will overlap slightly since they're usually 3 weeks apart. But other than that, what happened with the centering on that top line? Anyway, so we've got a month of data here, and even then the downloads are down a little bit on last time. That's not surprising. 112 was a huge release, very, very popular. It got a lot of downloads at release, a lot of people waiting for Puppet 4, so I'm not surprised by that. Other than that, the numbers are strong already, sort of 3 times as many people using 112 as 111 for whatever value that has. It's good. Plugins, I showed this last time. I got some good feedback on it from people, so I've kept it so you can have a bit of an idea of the more popular plugins. It's worth saying that I do edit this list. There are others that are deleted from this list because they're things like dependencies. Like deface comes in here pretty high, right? But it doesn't bring in functionality. It's a dependency of other plugins. So I do edit this list. I take out anything to do with Hammer or the Smart Proxy. I know that's a little unfair, but those are usually augmenting other plugins. So like putting in Hammer CLI Discovery doesn't tell me anything more than knowing Discovery is in the top 10 in the first place. So there is some editing, but it gives you a rough idea of what's popular at the moment. Good to see Cockpit making it up there. I think that's a very good plugin. Other than that, things you would mostly expect. Redmine. Now, I'm going to have to change this and the GitHub stats for next time. I've discovered, so if you remember, I've talked a bit about why, let me skip on a slide actually. I've talked a bit in previous times about why this open value is so much lower than this closed value. And I know the reason now. It's because this value under opened doesn't include things which have been opened and closed within the time period. It only checks for things that are currently open now, today. So if you opened something 3 weeks ago and it was closed 2 weeks ago, it'll appear in the closed metrics but not in the open metrics. So I know that it's wrong. I know why it is. I can fix it for next time. And these Redmine stats have the same problem. That's why these numbers look a bit different. Still, overall, busy. We've been busy. Usual kind of metrics. You can make of it what you will. This is a new metric, similar to the mailing list one. I wanted to know what percentage of our Redmine input or newly opened bugs were coming from people who were doing this to help the community, people who were not, fully paid to do this by Red Hat. Sorry, Red Hat guys, but it's important to know the difference. So it's about 23%. That's reasonable. I'm quite happy with that. Obviously, I'd like to see it larger, but it's a nice starting point. GitHub numbers, I haven't done this for a little while. I haven't broken it down for a little while, and again, the dates have changed, so I don't have any differences for you this time. But there's numbers there, and the takeaway is, of course, that we are, as ever, busy. The one thing I will point out is this number here, 43 closed features. That's 30 higher than last time. We have been seriously cracking out the features for the next releases, so that's good to see. Hey, I'm going to shut up now because, as I say, we have a busy demo today. So that's me done for metrics. I'm going to hand off to our first presenter, Andre, who's going to tell us a bit about Ansible. So over to you.
Thank you for a nice introduction. I'll just share my screen, and you should be able to see my screen right now.
Yep, could do to be a bit bigger though.
A bit bigger, like this.
One more.
More.
There you go. It's not a very high quality stream.
Okay. So this is one of the recent additions to Foreman Ansible plugin, and as you can see, I am on the screen with Ansible Roles, which is in the menu under Configure Ansible and Roles, and I'll show you how you can import Ansible Roles to your Foreman. Basically, if you've ever imported Puppet modules, this might look a little bit familiar to you. And basically, there's nothing to it. You can see a couple of roles I've imported earlier. Here is a button. You can choose where to import your roles from. If you have a proxy with Smart Proxy Ansible plugin, you can import roles from your proxy, or you can import them from the host your Foreman's on. Basically, if I choose to import from Foreman, now I can choose which roles to import. You can see the changes here. Basically, I can add these two that are new and remove these two that are no longer, that are basically obsolete. I can toggle the categories and choose to update. And when I do, I should see in just a few seconds a new list of roles. You can see that I've imported these recently, and that's about it.
Superb. Thank you very much. I do have a question for you, actually.
Yes.
And I should mention, I always forget to do this at the start of the demo, but if anyone watching live does have questions, you can ask them in our IRC channel, you can ask them on Twitter, you can ask them in the Q&A app on the stream, and I will try and pick those up and forward them on for you. But I do have a question of my very own for you. That import screen, I presume that's reusing the JavaScript and so on from the Puppet class import?
Yeah, more or less.
Cool. I asked that because I was going to do something similar in the Foreman templates plugin at some point for importing templates, and I did this a while ago and had some issues with reusing that stuff. So if you've managed to make it, if we've got multiple plugins reusing it, there might be a use case around making that nice and clean and easy to be. Yeah, have any plugin add a sort of a diffing system. So that could be something to talk about in the future, I guess.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. Well, stick around and we'll see if any questions turn up for you. I don't see any for you just now. So we're going to move on. I'm going to switch back to my slide deck. And next up, it's going to be Tomasz, who's also going to talk to us about Ansible.
Thanks, Greg. I'm already sharing my browser.
A bit bigger. So,
I'm sorry?
A little bit bigger, though.
A little bit bigger. Okay. I hope
everyone does that. Yeah, there we go. That's good.
Yeah, it breaks
the style. I know it breaks the style, but that's YouTube for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, it just will mean a bit more of scrolling. So I worked on assigning imported Ansible roles to host groups. So for the means of demo, I've got 3 host groups here in a cascade. So when I switch to edit the first of them, you see that when you have Ansible plugin installed, there's a new tab called Ansible Roles, and here we have.
We're still seeing your list at the moment. Oh, there it goes. It's caught up.
Yeah. So here you can see the two column select, multiple select widget, which you know from other parts of Foreman, and you can select the imported roles. And when you have a host group that inherits from another one, like this, which inherits from the test, you will see the inherited roles grayed out, so you can't remove them. You can add more of them though, and the tooltip next to the grayed one says that it's inherited from parent. So when I'm now going to create a new host, there's the Ansible Roles tab already. It's been there for a while. Now when I select a host group, for example, this one, wait until it gets loaded. Here it is, and when I switch to Ansible Roles, you see that the UI was reworked. There used to be a list of checkboxes. We now use the same two-column style as for host groups, and there are two inherited roles. They come from the host group, but the users can still add some more. So when this is assigned and saved, I've got one pre-created host here. It already has some of the roles. You can run them, and it will run all of the assigned roles. In this case, it should be 2 of them. So in a while, you should see a message saying that actually, if you were fast enough, you could see that there are two roles running for that host. So unless you have some questions, that's all from my side.
We do have a question. Actually, Toma is about to ask it, and I had the same thought as well. Do you wanna ask it, Toma, or shall I?
Yeah, I could ask it. I was wondering, since we have a similar use case for Puppet classes that uses a different UI, I was wondering, why did you decide to go with the multiple select UI and not the one we use for Puppet classes? And if it's better, maybe we should also use it for the Puppet classes instead of the UI we currently have.
I'll add to that as well. It seems to me that you can't see what's inherited from the host group using that two-pane approach, whereas the Puppet classes shows you what's been brought in from the host group.
That's certainly true. We did consider using the Puppet classes UI, but it's very Puppet specific. So for the beginning, we wanted to start with something simple, and we can refactor later, because there's going to be a bit different information displayed. In the Puppet classes, you have the classes or grouped by the module, which is something that you don't have here in roles. Role is actually equivalent of the class, and it's like self-contained. It's no modules. And the thing we would like to display here is probably which host group it comes from. So this is something that's on our radar, but we just didn't implement it for the beginning. We wanted to hear some feedback from users first, how usable it is, and then we can always refactor and make the UI richer.
Solid answer. I can't argue with any of that. I do think that being able to see the host where a role or a class came from is important. That's my gut instinct, having seen it. But you know, I'm just one person. So cool. Thanks so much. Oh,
another question. Or I think that it shows you that the role was inherited in the pop-up, if I see it incorrectly.
Yeah, it does show you that it was inherited, but it doesn't tell you which host group it was inherited from.
But we have only one host group in a host. And my question is, so if I click on the row, I can't unassign it, right?
You can't unassign the inherited ones. You can unassign what you assign.
Okay.
So functionality-wise, the same, but we just have to decide how to display and so on. Cool. Okay. Good stuff. I don't see any other questions just now. Let me just check IRC. Nope, nothing at the moment. So we'll move on. So next up, it's going to be Ivan actually. So we're going to move on from Ansible, talk a little bit about remote execution. Ivan, are you ready?
Yes. Hello. let me share my screen. So my demo today will be quick, and I will demo the stuff that somebody else did for the remote execution, which is great. Always to show something from the community. So we had one issue in the remote execution, which was we haven't exposed ability to set different SSH port. So one part to fix that was done by our intern Dominic. So that was on the server side, but it was not finished yet, and we had a user calling himself tuning your code, which tuned our smart proxy code in this regard, and he added the rest that was needed because he had the need for running or using that, which is great to see because we also see that somebody is using that and is willing to contribute back. So to show you what it really means, it should be a really simple demo on running echo hello on my host that is not running the SSH on port 22, and it failed because, as you can see, there was nothing listening on port 22. So because I know why is that, I will go to edit the host, and similar as we allow to set different, and I will decrease the font a bit, different, not SSH keys, but different effective user for the command pair user. We also now allow to set the port to be used for execution on per host basis by setting the remote execution SSH port. When I submit that and rerun the command again, it should get green. Here we go. And the last thing is that you can also set that by default if all your infrastructure is using non-default port. You can set it in remote execution SSH port, and it does the same. So I could go and run the stuff again, but you probably would guess how it ends up. So that's all I had to show you today. Thanks both Dominic and Tunica Code for improving that. I'm looking forward for more. That's it.
Cool. Thanks very much, Ivan. That's really great to see community contributions coming in. It's always nice to see. Okay, so moving along. We're going to have John up next. We're going to move on to some Catello content from a few people. So John's up first. So searches, John. Tell me all about it.
Thanks, Greg. Just a small piece of functionality that some users were asking for. They're asking to search through what capsule or smart proxy that your host is registered to. And it just makes life easier if you have a large infrastructure. So I added a field registered through, and you can search on a capsule, and you'll get a client. All the hosts that are registered through that capsule will show up. And if you go to the content host page and click on a host, there is now a field registered through, and it shows what the client is actually registered through here. And that is it for me.
Nice and quick, nice and simple. I like it. Good stuff. Given that the YouTube delay is probably less than more than your entire demo, we'll need to wait a couple of minutes to see if any questions come in. But in the meantime, we'll move on. Sticking with Catello, Brad wants to update on a feature we've seen in previous demos and just let us know what's happening in that area. So, Brad, you there? You're muted, by the way. Let me unmute you. Oh, I can't unmute you. You have to do that.
Yep, I got it. Thank you.
Hey,
So I apologize
there
for
we
the delay there. So yeah, I'm
go.
Brad. I'm one of the developers that works on Catello, and I just wanted to share with the team kind of just a real quick update on the lazy sync feature. This is one that was introduced back in Catello 3.1, which is the current stable branch or release of Catello. There was a demo that was provided, an excellent demo provided by David Davis back on February 18th in the sprint review. In it, he introduced the feature, described the concept, shows how to use it, etc. So I'd encourage folks to go ahead and check out that demo, including a link here so you can see where that's at. It's also on the current sprint page so you can see access to it. But I encourage it because I'm not actually going to provide a demo to it. The reason being, functionality for lazy sync itself, as far as the use case, hasn't changed. So I didn't want to repeat that information, but I did want to provide an update. But for folks that aren't familiar with lazy sync, just the high-level recap of what it is it's a feature that expands content download policies that are supported by Catello for Yum repositories. So historically, if you had a Yum repository that you created and you sync that into Catello, it would actually download all metadata and all packages during the repo sync. That process, for folks that have used it, realize that, hey, that takes a long time because you have repositories that are many gigabytes of information. So in order to improve and enhance upon that, Pulp and Catello have added 2 additional policies, one for on-demand and one for background. Both of these are new with lazy sync feature. On-demand provides download of only the metadata during the repo sync process. So the server will then essentially fetch and store packages on the file system only when clients request them. So you're basically taking advantage of efficiency in time as well as efficiency in your utilization of resources. Option is background task.
Sorry, you were breaking up a little bit. I want to check you were still there when you went quiet. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Yeah, I don't think it's you. I think there's gremlins in the wires.
Okay. Well, I'll continue, and if I need to stop or repeat, just let me know. The third option is background, which creates a background task to download packages after the initial synchronization. So what this does is when you initiate a sync, it will download all the metadata, report the sync is complete, and then in the background it'll continue to pull down the packages. So this option allows you kind of like a speed up in actually using the repository. So once that sync completes, you go ahead and start doing things like creating your content views and preparing to use them. So that's just a summary of what the feature is, but I just want to share that in case folks weren't aware of what it was. But as far as the update, with Catello 3.1 in the sprint, what we did is introduced a bunch of fixes for in the area of Pulp primarily. So Pulp has implemented many fixes as part of Pulp 2.8.7 in this area. I've listed them here just so you can kind of get a summary of them. Some of them are related to the feature as it is or related to interactions with the inter-server sync functionality. But then there's also fixes in EL6, EL7 for Python liburl3, which we're basically going to carry in the Catello repo until it's actually officially available in EL6 and EL7. Now, the reason I wanted to share this is because if folks are using this feature, I'd encourage you to go ahead and update to the latest Catello 3.1. Give it a try. Let us know if you have any questions or if you encounter any issues. Feel free to reach out to us on email, IRC, or create Redmine issues. And I guess that's basically it. Any questions?
Is the URL lib3 the error I've seen that when I'm downloading a package for the first time using Yum, it gives me a 404?
Yes, it could be.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it very likely is. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, go on. No, that it? Okay, cool. I just wanted to clarify for people watching, 3.1 is still at RC2, right?
It is.
Cool. Just to check that. I don't want people thinking this was a sneaky release announcement.
Oh, no. We were just updating it because we wanted to make sure that these fixes were available right away in a stable branch versus just exposing them only to nightly.
Sure. No, that makes sense. And obviously, for all of you who are willing to test an RC package, then please do. The testing is very, very welcome. John, I saw you having a bit of a discussion with Marek. I'll ask the question here just for the people watching. That registration system you've got there for your search, that's just for one type of registration at the moment, right? It doesn't extend to any other forms of detecting hosts like through Puppet and so on.
Yeah, that's correct, Greg. It's just through Subscription Manager right now.
Cool. Okay. It would always be nice to make that pluggable, I guess, and have other detection in there, and then you could search for it, which would be quite cool.
Yeah, definitely.
One for the future. One for the future. Cool. All right. So we're going to move on. Thanks, Brad, for that update on LazySync. I don't see any questions for you right now, so I'll keep my eyes open for that. Hang around.
I'll just comment that we already can search hosts by Puppet Master and Puppet CA. That's already present.
That is true. I'm aware of that, but it's only that's transient, right? If you change the Puppet Master, then that search will change as well. Whereas if you want to know the origin of a host, like where it came from, that could be something that's interesting from different sources, right? Anyway, so moving on to Lukasz, who has the biggest slot today to tell us about a pretty substantial piece of work that he's been doing for a while now. So, Lukasz, what do you got to tell us?
Yeah, it's a UEFI, also Unify or Unify if you want. I'll be using Unify for short. And so until yesterday nightly, the only supported way of PXE booting was PXE Linux for Foreman. We only had a PXE Linux template. It was that had a TFTP orchestration on. We already had a PXE grub template, but that was for Solaris, but Foreman was not orchestrating that for TFTP. It was not deploying that file, or the PXE grub on a TFTP. Now with the yesterday nightly, we have a few features in the core and smart proxy. So the biggest change now is if you click, Foreman can now handle PXE Linux, PXE grub, and PXE grub 2. For obvious reasons, PXE grub 2 or grub 2 is the most reliable and stable project when it comes to booting Unified servers or machines. And the first project that was capable of Unified booting was grub 1. And I'm not sure if this was merged upstream or if this was only a patch for Red Hat RHEL 6. But there's also some support of grub of Unify in grub 1. So we've decided to support all the three types. Now, how it works. So Foreman core now handles orchestrations for all the three types. So you can define associated with your host the PXE Linux template, PXE grub 2, and PXE grub 1. And if you associated all the three, it will deploy all the three templates for a particular host. If you associate just one, it will do just one. If you don't associate anything, and you'll have a set PXE loader, I'll describe that later. It will error out with a error that you need to associate it proper template, which is great. You can also set an option to none and do a non-PXE deployment. We'll talk about this later. So another change, if you click on a deploy default PXE templates, I'll show that in a minute. It will deploy the PXE Linux CFG/default. That's the ordinary default template for PXE Linux for unknown hosts. That was that used to be as normal, but it also deploys grub2/grub CFG, which is the default for grub 2, and grub/menu LST. And it also for grub 1, there's a difference between when you're booting in a BIOS mode and Unify mode. And if you are using BIOS, it reads the menu LST, and if you're booting in a Unify mode, it has searches, the grub searches for FE default file. So basically, menu LST and FE default are two copies of the same content. We're not using symlinks because of SC Linux, we're making a new copy. So if you do a deploy default templates, it will essentially do 4 files, deployment of copying of 4 files. And you need to have, of course, the PXE Linux default global default template, PXE grub global default, PXE grub 2 global default template. These were all are shipped with the nightly Foreman nightly. So let me just unshare and share my Foreman instance. So you should see my Foreman. Now I'll go ahead and create a new host and show you how this works. So basically, everything remains unchanged. If I click onto operating systems, you'll see I have I think I'll be doing CentOS 7.1, I guess. If I click on templates, you'll see we have a PXE Linux template. That's nothing new. But we also have a PXE grub template and PXE grub 2 template here. So and this operating system is capable of PXE booting all the 3 variants of all the 3 systems, firmwares. So if I click on new host, I can create a new host, and we're at it. Again, this was merged yesterday's or the day before yesterday. So in yesterday's nightly, it's available. If I select appropriate host group, and I need to add a particular MAC address because I have a libvirt host ready with a unified turned on and will be booting on. And you'll notice that there's a new flag here under the operating system tab, PXE loader. It's for the host group and the host itself. And it allows you basically, when I click a submit, it will deploy all the 3 kind of templates, all the PXE associated templates that you associated. And you only need to take care of the DHCP file name option, which is the thing that informs the DHCP client about what to download and start executing from the TFTP server. So it used to be PXE Linux BIOS, so that entry maps to PXE Linux.0. This was hard-coded in Foreman, and if you do a migration, if you do an upgrade from Foreman stable to nightly, all your hosts will have a PXE Linux BIOS set automatically. So everything goes on. You don't need to do any manual change. So this is the setting here. You can, you will most likely will be choosing a grub 2 a UEFI, and this will, appear if the operating system, have the template associated. So my CentOS 7.1 has all the 3, option types. So I'll seal them all. So grub 2 UEFI will map to grub 2 / the file name is called bootx64 EFI.EFI, or if you're booting 32 bits, that's boot EI32 EFI. The same goes for grub, but the subfolder is not grub 2 but grub. And one additional note for secure boot: if you select secure boot, it will be booting grub 2 / shim.efi. That's the special secure boot loader that Shane loads grub using some kind of certificates. And the same applies for grub 1. So there's a difference only in the folder. We also added PXE Linux UEFI, which maps to PXE Linux.efi file name. But this is only in the, the PXE Linux was not yet released with the support. There was not stable release with the unified support, but we've seen comments for our community that someone is already using that. You need to build it yourself, and it somehow works. I tested it a year ago, and it worked. But so for completeness, we can also select this option. And you can also select none if you don't want to, do a PXE orchestration at all, and you want to, for example, use a iPXE or any other technology to boot your system. So I'll
Can I just jump in there? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've seen discussion in the community IOC channel over the last few days of the DHCP leases and what gets put in them and how Foreman tells it what file to boot. Mm-hmm. Is that all that controls? It's just about what goes to the DHCP lease?
Yeah, it's nothing else. It just selects the DHCP.
So if you set that to none, then you're basically allowing the DHCP server to determine what file the machine uses to boot.
If I select it to none, yeah, I will not sending a file name option at all. Right, so it will.
We're not sending one. But if the DHCP server has one set, then it will use that. Yeah,
Yep.
because I know there's a couple of people in the community who are currently patching Foreman to stop it sending Pixie Linux.0.
Yep. I saw it. Yeah.
So this will be very exciting to them, I would imagine.
Exactly.
So, okay, cool. Sorry.
Yeah. And more than that, we also had a report on unable to do iPixie booting. You had to associate it at least a Pixie Linux template because submitting a new host was erroring out with you need to associate it Pixie Linux. So now with none option you can avoid that. Okay, so last comment on this operating system tab. If you let me just quickly submit that. And I'll, I know I have a DNS record, existing DNS record, so I'll override it. And I'll quickly do a new host again, and I want to show you that if you create a new blank host and you switch over to operating system, select architecture and operating system, it will automatically suggest, we've implemented what I call suggestion. It suggests you the best option, and we consider the grub2 Unify as the best option if they send us, if this operating system has a Pixie grub2 template associated with it. If not, I think it will fall back to Pixie Linux bias, and if that's not associated, it will go to none, I guess. So don't be surprised. You'll be seeing grub2 Unify as a default. You can always change that in a host group. So anyway, we have this host ready, and now it's in the build state. That's correct. And let me quickly unshare and show you. I'll switch over to my libvirt and share again. I don't know why Google Hands don't allow me to share one monitor, because I have two monitors and I don't want to apparently share all the screen, which is huge. So you should see a Core firmware libvirt instance booting from a network doing the DHCP, and you'll see a template. I'll show in a minute the template itself, and it will be now, if I hit enter, we don't want to wait another 10 seconds, it will be booting up Anaconda. This is purely Unify, so it's booting a chain booting, or I'd say, well, actually it's chain booting grub. Grub is chain booting a grub in Unify. So I don't let this to install. I don't want this to be rewritten, and I'll again stop sharing and move back to my. I hope I still have a few minutes left. I want to share. Okay, so you should see my terminal on here. So if I do find, you should see that the new TFTP entry or file name appeared. This is Pixie Linux. This is grub2. This is grub1. Again, for grub1, we have two different naming conventions. This is for BIOS mode, and this is for the EFI default, and it searches in this path. So this is for EFI mode. So as you can see, this is an example of the template which we actually saw in the Pixie Linux. In the Pixie Linux, sorry, in the libvirt. Now I'm going to cancel build. You won't see that. I'm not, resharing my screen for that. Just clicking cancel build, and there's a conflict. There's this DNS record. So I wanted to show. Let me just show you the default. I just want to show you one more thing. Yeah, here's a chain loading. So this is the chain load from local disk. We had troubles chain loading grub2 from Pixie booting grub2 into a grub2 from ESP. That's the special partition for Unify, and we've come we made this hack that tries to locate the correct file name, file path, and then if it exists, then it chain loads, and it works. But we need to iterate through all the possible known paths. So I've put a Debian Ubuntu. I haven't tested that yet, but it works. There is a capability in grub2 to search for a file name. It's called this one, it's capable to search on particular. This should work, but doesn't work. I need to file a ticket for grub2 developers. So we have a hack here that will load it. In the template, it's obviously it's a array of the possible operating systems or supported operating systems. So if it won't load into your hard drive after the installation, you maybe need to add your directory there. And I guess yeah, we have updated the templates a little bit. I cleaned them a little bit because we've been. Let me just quickly share, and Greg, stop me if I don't have a time, but I want to show you. Here we have a template.
You're okay. Keep going for a bit.
Thanks. So. So here's an example of Pixie grub2. So you'll see more snippets there, where we have several new snippets. For example, so I basically broken up the templates, the Pixie templates, into several snippets here. So if I go over to provisioning templates, you'll see that we have now a chain load snippet. So for all the three kinds, we have chain load snippet, we have discovery snippet, and the chain load. You'll see that list I've showed you of the supported here. This is the list of supported operating system that we search for the boot x64 file name in. And another change, I'm not sure where it is, but I've also added a new helper function, which is called log_something debug warning, and it allows you to log. It was useful when I was debugging stuff. It allows you to send a message into a Foreman log. It's filed under a template logger. It's not in the app logger. It's under the template logger, so you can turn it on or off if you don't like it. It's somewhere hidden in the templates. The one important thing is I've been testing this mostly with me and Daniel, and thanks to Daniel and Timo from a community for testing this huge patch. It was you see only one small flag edit, but there's a lot of work behind the scenes during the templating, and as you can see, we have now 3 different kinds of Pixie kinds, and so if you want to support RHEL 6, RHEL 7, both work a little bit differently. So for RHEL 6, you want to use a grub1 because grub2 doesn't work with RHEL 6, and vice versa. So the matrix of all the possibilities is huge now. So any testing will be welcome, and please file tickets. And to one more thing, you will see if I do Pixie grub2, you'll see that we only ship currently the Pixie grub templates in grub2 and grub1 for Kickstart. So Red Hat has been tested. My plan is, short-term plan is to work on pre-seed, so to support Debian and Ubuntu. So it's just a matter of both all the 3 kinds have different syntax. Unluckily, that grub2 is not compatible with grub1. That's the reason why we have actually 2 kinds. So we need to just modify the current templates and rewrite them. So if you want to use Ubuntu or Debian, you can, but you need to write your own templates. It's not difficult. So just go ahead and just ping me if you need help. And there should be a ticket already. I can send you a link perhaps after the recording, and that tracks this. Okay, so I guess that's it.
Cool. Thank you very much. That's a pretty impressive piece of work. And as I said earlier, I know there's at least 3 people I think I've seen in IRC who are already patching how we do our DHCP lease at the moment, who'd be very interested in this. So it's huge. It's a lot of work well done. I'll also say this is a bit of a selling point for our request for comments repo, which has been pretty important in this, right? Because there was a pretty extensive RFC that got some good discussion to make sure this was as good as it could be, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So if people aren't aware of the RFC repo, this is a good time to remind people that it exists. If you're interested in sort of the larger questions that we're talking about, it's a good repo to go and take a look at. GitHub/theforeman/RFCs. Okay. Well, thanks very much, Lukasz. I don't see any questions for you just now. So we're going to move on, and we're going to move on to something a bit more light-hearted. Right? It couldn't get less light-hearted. Really. That's pretty dense, important stuff. So instead, we're gonna move on to talk a little bit about statistics and dashboard improvements with Toma. So lighten the mood for us, Toma.
Gladly. So I'm gonna show a couple of improvements that should be important, especially for our larger users, because when you have a small setup, performance is usually pretty snappy, but once you get into the tens of thousands of hosts or even more, then you start noticing some things tend to slow down. And you can see my screen, right?
Yep, we can see it.
Excellent. So the first one is an improvement to the dashboard. It actually came from an issue we had where if one of the widgets failed to load, it would break the entire dashboard, which was kind of annoying. During trying to fix that, what I did was just make the dashboard load all the widgets via Ajax, which means that if I refresh the page, you'll notice that there's the page loads, and then each widget starts loading separately via a separate Ajax call. This means that if your dashboard usually takes a couple of minutes to load, especially for those big users, it would now load much faster, and you'd start getting the widgets appearing once they finish calculating all the data they need. So that's the first improvement. Once I did that, I had found a query that was extremely slow and improved it. So I don't remember which widget it was. I think the latest events widget, or one of the widgets which was extremely slow got its query improved. So it should also increase the speed up the load times. And the second improvement was in the statistics page. This was done by Ohad. It's actually been merged for a while, and I don't know if you noticed, but I'll refresh it so you'll see that also the statistics charts load via Ajax, which is also important, especially for those large setups. This is pretty fast because I only have 5 hosts. But when you have thousands, this page could have taken several minutes to load, and which made it very unuseful for those cases, which are usually those that actually do need the statistics more. And as part of his refactoring to make it Ajax, he also changed the way statistics are loaded, and I'll switch over to my editor. This is currently just to show you how easy it is now to add a new chart on the statistics page. He created several helpers, count hosts, which counts hosts by certain attributes, count facts, which does the same for facts, count numerical fact pair, which is useful for facts like memory that have a couple of facts, and count puppet classes, which is a unique case where we need to calculate all the puppet classes separately. But just to show you how easy it is to add a new chart, I'd added a few charts, just merged that this morning. So the host group chart and the location and organization charts were added just today. And just to show you how easy it is, I added this chart that counts hosts by model. That's all I needed to do. Just add this line to the app services statistics RB file. And if I'll reload now, we have I need to save first and reload. And there we go. We have a model chart that shows us a new statistics So it's very easy to add either interesting statistics in core, or if you have a plugin, it should also be fairly simple to extend that. And it's laying the ground for greatly improving the charts. I'll tell you there's some work being done, that there's a PR in progress of switching this to use React and C3. It should also improve the UI look and feel and make it easier and more usable. That's kind of coming soon. That's it for me.
Cool. It does look very good. It seems we're very close. There's a long-standing request to make it possible for users to define their own charts, right? It seems like we're very close to that now. So that's very cool. Lukash did have a question. Lukash, do you want to fire away since you're here, or shall I do it for you? Ah, he's still muted. Okay, I'll do it. So
I think you're
he was
muted.
asking. Apparently he's unplugged his microphone. So he was asking that if you've moved that over to Ajax and you have, say, a lot of charts or a lot of widgets, isn't that going to hit the server fairly hard if they all fire off at once?
It could. Usually, I don't think that's our main bottleneck, because it's just calculating, counting stuff in the database. It could take a few seconds, maybe a minute. But usually in production instances, we'd have several threads working or processes working, so I don't think that would be a significant issue.
Yeah, that seems fair, especially if like all but one of your objects load within a second or two, and it's just one that takes a couple of minutes, right? Then actually you're not making the problem any worse, really. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once it's done in React, it would also improve the load times, and just use Flux or something to store the data, so you wouldn't need to hit the database for each widget. It would just get the data in one hit.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks very much, Tomer. That's really good to see. So that brings us to the end, pretty much. It's been a busy day, so thanks for everyone who's stuck around to the end. We've had pretty consistent viewers all the way through, so that's nice. Thanks to everyone for watching. It's been great to see it busy. Thanks to all the presenters for all of their excellent content. Thanks to everyone for watching. If the usual YouTube's footer, if you like what you watch, give us a like on the video so that I know to do more of it. If you want to see more of it, then follow our channel so you know what's coming up. You can follow us on Twitter, and you can obviously find us in IRC and on the mailing lists. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and do take care.